Hello, folks, and welcome to an episode recap for Rappan Athuk. As I've only just recently gotten permission to record this from the GM, gonna give you a little bit of a rundown on what's happened so far, alright? For those of you that don't know, Rappan Athuk. It is a dungeon of legend. Many adventurers go there, few return. The legend behind it is that Orcus, god of fury and hatred and everything bad, fought Zelkar at the very gates of the dungeon. And Zelkar and his followers managed to defeat Orcus and seal him deep within. So the legend goes. Many adventurers have sought fortune and fame from going into this dungeon, and we are no different. There was Macduff, Curian, Eleanor, Remnar, Davaic, and Aophel. There were 6 odd companions, and they made an odder whole, but strange times call for strange alliances. Historians don't know what exactly brought them together, but they all had one goal in mind: exploring Rappan Athuk. It was a strange ruin that is said to be the origins of pure evil. While our group was curious about Rappan Athuk, they came across some weird people mentioning a place called the Mouth of Doom. For some reason, Davaic and Aophel were absent on the initial outing. Perhaps they forgot to tie their shoes. Either way, it wasn't important now. What was important is that our group encountered the infamous Mouth of Doom. It is, as can be expected from its title, a mouth-shaped entrance to a dungeon. Our brave warriors steeled themselves and went inside. 6 doors made their presence very clear with various insignias. One of these doors, marked by a skull, was the door that our heroes chose to go through. The group moved cautiously through the dark halls. Macduff took point through the narrow halls and managed to find a pit trap. Nobody fell in, luckily, and the group even managed to gain a magical chest for Remnar. A little further into the Mouth of Doom, they encountered kobolds. The group divided itself up and managed to take a few of them out. However, one of these kobolds managed to get away with a sunrod. Kobolds suck. In another room, Curian managed to fall on his butt after trying to loot a skeleton. It was becoming painfully obvious to the group that this dungeon was going to be a trap-filled center of danger. One more room in, and the group encountered a beautiful glass painting of a humanoid figure. Centipedes proved to be a minor nuisance in this room. At the end of the day, our adventurers rested easy in an abandoned kitchen. In the supposed morning, Curian and Macduff awoke to a startling discovery. Eleanor and Remnar had mysteriously vanished in the night. After a bit of panic of some noises outside their door, the cat and the dwarf were joined by Davaic and Aophel. Their reunion didn't last very long, and didn't even have any cake. They backtracked into the room with the glass painting and took down some more annoying centipedes. Upon examination, Davaic revealed a devastating truth about the group's predicament. The painting was of Orcus, who was said to be sealed down in the very depths of the dungeon. It was obvious that Davaic had come here to perform his holy duty. If Orcus truly exists within Rappan Athuk's labyrinthine layout, Davaic would destroy him. The other members of the group didn't take this news lightly, as it meant that a truly powerful foe would await them. They decided to backtrack to a door that the previous group couldn't get open. Davaic helped out Macduff, and the door was eventually opened. It was at this time that Curian and Aophel decided to suffer a case of narcolepsy. After the 2 recovered from their nap attack, the group found a room full of pools of water. Through the powers of trial, error, Davaic getting almost killed, and Macduff not believing in any of this magic water hocus-pocus, the group discovered a ladder that led into some dark, grimy depths. The group thought it best to tackle this ladder by proceeding to fall on top of each other in a comical fashion. At the bottom of this ladder, the group faced a pack of rats. The group split up again, with Macduff guarding Aophel, while Curian teamed up with Davaic. The rats proved to be worthy foes, but as unconsciousness became the rule rather than the exception. The brave companions prevailed, though. In this new floor, they discovered a room which had a sinking floor with deadly gas. They discovered a room with a magical steam statue. They discovered that Kurian could make himself invisible at will. In the end, they camped out near the magical steam statue. In the morning, our group encountered more rats. The damned things were persistent, but they joined their brethren in the afterlife. The party had become paranoid. Their caution had stepped up to irrational levels. They would encounter various rooms with intricate designs. They took a look at many of these rooms, and used the almighty screw that noise tactic. They explored the dungeon at a snail's pace. They needed to thoroughly examine everything to make sure there were no traps. At the end of this long slog, Macduff and Kurian would meet their destiny. The group opened the doors to a nest of gnolls. These gnolls packed spears and anger. Macduff teamed up with Davaic to hold the front line. Kurian flung arrows and Aophel flung spells. Alas, this tactic couldn't hold up forever. The gnolls cleverly threw spears. Davaic had to retreat. Macduff did his best, but couldn't hold the entire front line by himself. Gnolls slipped through his grasp. Kurian had to use his claws and use them as well as he could. Sadly, though, a cat is still a cat. Kurian was slain. Davaic kept everyone healthy as much as he could. Aophel focused on hitting the gnolls as hard as he could. Macduff continued his single-minded focus on holding the line. Macduff was a mighty dwarf, but he was still a dwarf. Near the end of the battle, Macduff met his end to the last of the gnolls' spears. After the battle, Davaic and Aophel gave the fallen as many rights as they could be given. They took a possession off of each warrior. They took Kurian's bow and Macduff's Armok-simpled gauntlet. They got out of the mouth of doom as quickly as possible. They may have survived the encounter with the gnolls, but they are now the only two members of the adventuring party. There is always hope, though, and Rappan Athuk attracts adventurers far and wide. The party will recover. The morning was heavy with sorrow. The events of the last few days were still fresh in the minds of Davaic and Aophel. While Davaic turned to his god to ease his heart, Aophel turned to booze. Fresh faces entered the tavern. One of these faces was a young human man with a rapier and a cheery disposition. This young man introduced himself as Snave. The other face was a tough, cloaked dwarf with a scythe. This man would be introduced as Dolgir Macduff, the older brother of Irist Macduff. The two started out in a cheerful mood, but Aophel informed the naive Snave that Irist had died. There were no proper rites. Snave, being the wide-eyed fool, demanded to go into the mouth of doom. He wanted to retrieve his pseudo-uncle's remains. Dolgir was silent about the whole ordeal. It was during this minor scuffle between Aophel and Snave that the group learned about the town's terrible secrets. They were a group of assholes who bet money on which adventurers would die and which adventurers would live. Snave felt slightly disgusted at this town, called Zelkar's Fury. Very. This slightly disgusted Snave, and it was an extremely disrespectful act. After obtaining items and a bounty, the group decided to head back into the Mouth of Doom. As they traveled along the road, they encountered a mysterious woman with a few wolves. Snave told the group that she was a vengeful spirit and that they should stay away from her at all costs. They were fortunate that she, or so it seemed, deemed them as less of a threat than a helpless kobold. Some trolls revealed more insight into the power of this woman. Their wounds had been wolf bite marks, and the blood on their weapons wasn't fresh. They would have to pay caution to this woman should she grace them with her presence in the future. However, they continued into the Mouth of Doom. The group's goal was simple. Snave asked to be taken to Irist's body. Entering into the room with the magic pools, though, the group was ambushed by pesky sturges. It was here that Dolgir proved the genetic superiority of his family by cleaving through the sturges like wet cookies. Snave demonstrated his hit-or-miss abilities in combat. Sure, he was able to flip past his enemies in order to get into a flanking position, but he also accidentally stabbed Davaic. After the sturges were dealt with, Davaic noticed that the hole to the second floor was now sealed off. The group took this time to backtrack to the entrance of the dungeon, for it was getting too late. They needed a secure room, and they didn't trust the kitchen after what has become known as the abduction incident. They were going to hole up in the room with the 6 doors, but Dolgir wanted to press on. The fool charged towards one of the door, which was marked with a wolf. He triggered a pressure plate that dropped a portcullis between Dolgir and the group. This was a metal portcullis, and the group's efforts to move it were in vain. First, they tried having Dolgir, Snave, and Devaik lift the massive gate up, but it was to no avail. Dolgir reassured the group that he'd be fine, and he'd try to find a way to them. The group's second attempt at moving the portcullis through strength was pointless as well. Snave tried to fit through the holes in the device, but even he was too big. They had no choice but to try to find a place to sleep. Dolgir, in the meanwhile, found a bunch of rooms with fossilized skeletons. These are signs of wars long past. Snave and Devaik fell into a pit trap while exploring a passage to the north. Aelfel was luckily too far behind. Some people shouted about intruders, and the party knew that combat was on. Snave jumped out of the pit with remarkable ease. Devaik showed that armor wouldn't weigh him down, and jumped out. As Snave saw he was right in the front lines of hostile banditry, he backed into a corner and focused more on defending himself. Aelfel unleashed ear-piercing screams into the bandits. Devaik took out his crossbow to pelt the bandits with arrows. Dolgir managed to find a different passageway, which led back into the room with the 6 doors. He heard sounds of combat and quickly joined his group. Snave traded places with him, and the dwarf became a vanguard that separated his companions from harm. The bandits called for a man named Thorin to join them, and join them he did. He swung his mighty sword upon Dolgir, who barely managed to survive the blow. After taking down another bandit, Thorin grabbed Dolgir. It turned out that Thorin, and his troop by extension, were not bandits. No, they were merely another adventuring party. This made our group feel rather silly. Peace had been made, and the 2 groups decided to share camp. In this camp, our group would discover Eleanor. The group would have asked for answers to such questions as, why did Thorin stop combat? Why was Eleanor there? And where did Remnar ever go? They were too tired by this time, though, and decided to rest their heads. I hope you guys enjoy the rest of our shenanigans. And thank you for joining us for Rappan Athuk.